All right. Hey, so
Hey,
um, welcome back. Second episode of the podcast where we talk about AI in construction.
yeah,
Uh, I'm Roberto. I'm here with my co-founder Raul. We're the co-founders of Flowlly, an AI platform for construction. And today we're going to be talking about something that is very relevant. Every time we talk with potential customers, they bring this thing up, which is data security.
right,
Is my data safe? Is my data secure when I'm using AI? Right. And I think part of that conversation is also how do I set up my data to make the best of AI? Right. So
right,
it's a two-sided problem. So first, I need to have the data. Second, what's happening to my data when I use AI, right?
right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Um, and yeah, where do you want to start, bro?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with what are the things that we heard? Like, what are the problems that people are seeing? In your opinion, what is the scary part about sharing data with a third party, right? A company like ours or anybody else for that matter, right?
I think this question is coming from 2 years, 3 years ago, right? When OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and suddenly there were these news. Samsung employee put some data into ChatGPT, and now that data is being shown to other people, right?
Right.
So there were a lot of instances like that 3 years ago, or no, I don't know if a lot, but there were some that were very public.
Hmm.
And I think people read those things, and now it's, hey, I don't want this data to be used for training models. I don't want this data to be shown to other people outside of my company. Right?
Right.
That's I think kind of where this question is coming from what they've heard it's happening to their data or might happen to their data.
Right. Yeah. I also think like there's couple of elements to it. Um, First one is the legality of the data. So, for example, you are working in a public project and you have a lot of contentions going on with different stakeholders, and the information that you retain or you have in your database is can make break your case. So, you don't want that data to be leaked out in the public. So, that need to be safeguarded, right? Because when there will be a legal battle, and most of the construction companies and construction projects gets into legal battle at some point, um, while the project progresses. So we don't want that data to be leaked in the public domain because that can break or make or break the narrative that the companies are trying to push um, against the stakeholder or against the legal things that they have. So in that opinion, there is um, a fear, and like fear, and rightly so, of like that data is not falling into the hands of the public or like people who can break their cases.
Mhm.
The second part of the problem is proprietary information. So if you're a company, you have developed procedures and you have developed methods and you have training material that you impart your employees, or you do your work in a certain way that helps you earn more money or increase your profit, right? Uh, if somehow that data gets leaked and it becomes part of a model, then that proprietary information is accessible across everybody, right? Because then it's a part of a model and everybody can ask certain question and get that information out. So that's the, I think, another fear. And then I think the third kind of fear is just like without like you just want to safeguard your thing. If it's your data, you don't want to share it and you want to maintain the ownership of your thing. So if you are giving your data to a company to do whatever things you want to do, you still want to retain the ownership of your thing. So in the future, if you want to take back data and say, okay, I will want you to delete everything that you did, then that everything should be everything, not like just the data in the database or like what the models they train or things they do it. So everything includes everything. And so that, I think that's the fear that most of the construction companies have. And feel free to um, add more if you think I missed anything.
No, I think yes, I would say two sides, right? One is I don't want my data be shared with anyone else,
Hmm.
right? But I also, this is my data. What are you
Right.
doing with it, right? How are you
Yeah.
using it? So those
Yeah.
those are two things that I think in this AI world are extremely relevant. Because on one hand, I don't want this data to be shared. Then yes, it's not being exposed through the training or anything like that, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and then the other is this is my data. Give it back to me once we no longer have a commercial relationship. And,
Yeah.
and that's a difficult one, right? Not every company enables that,
Yeah.
and
And
and and that one is important because you own your data.
yeah. And also like in this DNA age, the things are so integrated. Like when you give your data to Microsoft or Google, uh, there are third-party relationships with Microsoft of other companies, and they are sharing data between each other, and those companies are sharing data between each other. So when you end basically a relationship with one company, you don't even know the extent where that data went, right? And that's not just the construction data, it's your when you are browsing internet, your personal data and everything. So everything is interlinked these days, right? So it's very, very difficult to just eliminate that part and come back um, to ground zero where you started, right? once
Yeah,
once you dig in. So
that's
I think, yeah, go ahead.
no. I think that's really good because sometimes we don't think that way, but the fact that we're already putting our data in SharePoint,
Hmm.
in Word, in Excel, somehow Microsoft has access to that. They're
Yeah.
probably not doing anything with that, but they already are storing your data in their
Hmm.
servers, right? So your data is already out there.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, there's parts of that data that these companies are probably sharing with someone else uh, for whatever reasons, right?
Yeah.
So you're already trusting these companies with your data.
Yeah.
What now, moving from just putting your data in SharePoint, right, which we've been doing for many years and we trust, I guess the biggest risk there is a hack, right?
Hmm.
Someone hacking your SharePoint instance through
Yeah.
phishing or whatever, finding someone's email and password and then accessing it and downloading all your data from there. That's
Hmm.
that's one possibility. The other is someone hacking AWS or Azure or Google's clouds and downloading data from there, right? But those are difficult because these teams have, or these companies have big cybersecurity teams making sure those things are not happening and there's encryption happening and those things. So data is most probably pretty safe.
Right.
But now when we move back or when we move to AI, we have new players, right?
Hmm.
We have OpenAI, which is a startup type of company with a lot of money, but still very young. And then we have a lot of startups like us
Hmm.
who are building AI products that require some form of data to,
Yeah.
to, to be given to us. right? So
Right.
first, let's talk about companies like OpenAI and these large companies who are creating the main AI models, right? So OpenAI, Google, Anthropic.
Yeah.
Those are three leading models right now, right?
Yeah.
How can we trust them with our data? What's happening when we give them our data that allows us to be certain to whatever degree we can be certain that our data is not being used for what we don't want it.
Yeah. And I'll talk high level of when I understand. Um, there's two way to consume these models, right? So when I say consume, it's using those models. So you could directly go to ChatGPT and type your question, and then it provides you with some kind of answers. And the other way is API routes. And same is applicable for Google or Mistral or any of other LLM provider,
I'm
right?
going to pause you quickly there because I think in our audience maybe won't know what API call means, or if you can explain it in a way that non-techie guys would understand.
Yeah. So good. So there's two ways to consume data. One is through website. You go to website, you type in your question, you go to ChatGPT, or you go to Google Gemini, and you get the answer. The second is through API. What API is through programs. It's like it's not a direct interface or direct website there where you can go and use this thing. You have to use it through program. And obviously everybody cannot write program, but when you use through program, they have a different kind of guidelines or different kind of user privacy policies than they use for the um, website version of these things, right? So if you go to website version, you write anything in ChatGPT, they retain your data, and I think their policy is they can use it to enhance their models and everything. So whenever a company's member is using ChatGPT and typing something, that becomes part of their own data set, and um, they'll use it to train their model. But when you use through API, which is through program, um, and the program is other companies who are using OpenAI behind the doors to use to build their things. That's where the programming comes in. And so when you use through programs, they have different kind of privacy policies. So those privacy policies, you can enable them so they don't use their data or they don't store your data, and they can then you can use it in whatever way you want, right? And only thing, so the question becomes like, how do I trust that they won't use it? So I mean, that's what they say. They don't do it, and they have like certifications and compliances and policies and regulatory bodies making sure that they are doing what they are saying what they are doing, right? So there's a little bit of trust, but a lot of regulation and those things in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to your point, when someone is using it directly from the chat interface, there's also ways to opt out from the
Yeah.
data. So all of them now have ways to opt out. But yeah, most of the softwares that allows you to use AI are connecting to one of these large models. And like you
Yeah.
said, because it's computer talking to each other, there's a privacy policy that we set that
Yeah.
that restricts the data usage from training models and all those things, right? So it's already been done by most of the companies who are leveraging these AI models to
Yeah.
provide services and products.
And the thing is, like, uh, so so there's this company like Microsoft, Google, OpenAI. They're building big models. They're spending $200 million to build out these models, right? So you're giving data to them, but like there's very little chance like a small lab or a small company is going to build the models that are comparable to those people. So particularly now, there were some labs who were building this big models, but now I think the market is consolidated between like OpenAI and Claude and Google and like a couple others. So these are the only players out there. Anybody who wants to get there, they have to spend $200 million. So um, you can be sure that nobody is going to use your AI, your data to build out a model and compete with you. So the chances of other construction company using your data somehow and surpassing you is very slim, right? It's just these guys, big lab, they are going to use it and they're going to make a better model for you, even if you don't opt out from your model, from your
Yeah,
data security.
yeah. I think that that also opens a new route for this conversation, which is DeepSeek, right?
Yeah,
That's the other side of, if you want to have 100% data protection, then use an open source model
yeah,
and have it in your systems, right?
yeah,
Let's bring that down. What's an open source model? What is this other alternative?
yeah. So the way to think about an open source model is the the labs that we talked about who are making like big models like Twitter or XAI or Gemini, OpenAI, Google, all of those, they they don't release um, the code or the software. They don't give software out to public. So they keep the software with them. So every time you want to access their software, you have to go to Google and ask them, "Hey, I want to access your software," and they'll run the software for you, which is your large language model or your AI. So they keep their AI software with the company. Nobody can see what they have written, how it's working, what is the logic behind it. Nobody can see it. But there's other kind of companies out there. DeepSeek is one of them, right? And Mistral is one of them. uh, they have some model that they have given all the source code, all the weight is a way of how the software, right? So they have given the software out to the public, so anybody can rent a computer. It needs a big computer to run the LLM model, so anybody can rent a computer and run the model in that computer. So what that means is, right now you need to go to Google to use AI, right? So you need to go to Google's Gemini or OpenAI's ChatGPT.com, and then there you can use the AI to do whatever you want. But with this open source model, you can run it in your computer, in your company's hardware, and then here you don't need to go to any third party. It's the software is running on your computer, so you can access it from anywhere through your computer. So all the data, you can be 100% sure that all of the data is going to be remain within the company. It's not going to leave, right?
Yeah, so this way of doing it doesn't have a connection to the outside world. So everything's staying in your computer or
Yeah,
your company's server, or the computer in your company that has that model, and every other computer in your company connects just to that computer to use that, right?
yeah,
So the data is staying there. But that's easier said than done, right?
mm,
Because now you need to set servers, you need to uh, monitor the system to make sure that it's always up and running when people need it, right?
yeah,
So I believe for most companies, that's for most construction companies, that's not feasible, because now you need to have a specialized IT team who's going to
yeah,
be supporting your servers and making sure everything is running nicely, right? So maybe for the billion-dollar companies, fine, they could have that, and they probably already have servers for doing a lot of the things they need. But for smaller companies, it's just probably not feasible, right?
yeah. I agree. I think there's like lots of investment that's needed in terms of the manpower. You need specialized people who can run and handle these machines. Um, you need like a special machines, because you can't just take any machine off the shelf and run. By machine, I mean computer. So you can't take any computer off the shelf and run these large language models. You need like very beefy machines to run those things, and then you need like a lot of power to run those things. And then you need specialized people who are monitoring everything, making sure everything is good to go. If there are any errors, then they can come and like fix those things. Um, and then you need to set up a lot of network requests and network parameters so everybody can access the machine from anywhere. And then you need like a way to access those things, because the software is very raw. So you need like a website or something to access those models. So there's a lot of setup that need to be done before you can actually use it, because the companies like DeepSeek who are giving you this software, it's still raw software. It's like it's given you car parts and now you need to make car. But the open AIs and other people, they have given you car so you can use it car. But it can be done, right? And once you have the part, you can build out the car if you are motivated enough, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. So the Googles, the open AIs are giving you the complete thing, the final
Yeah.
product. The other guys are giving you the raw material, so you need to find all the other elements and put them together to get the final product.
Yeah.
Uh, cool. So maybe we can now move to what data means in this AI world, and how to make it better. Just
Mm.
to conclude on this data security, it's these large companies providing the models are giving privacy policies that say your data is not going to be used for this thing, right? So really, what we have to do is trust them.
Yeah.
That's just how risk tolerant people are, but that's what's out there. If you
Yeah.
want to be 100% secure, then the option is get one of the open source models like DeepSeek or Llama, and set up your servers in your company and run them from there. But there's challenges with that, right?
Yeah.
So on one hand, you have the out of the box kind of solution, but you need to trust. On the other, you need to build the box,
Yeah.
and and that point is going to be 100% secure.
There's also a middle ground where, like, especially for OpenAI models, you can run them in Azure. So Azure is Microsoft's cloud, and where Microsoft manages all the machines and everything. So you can rent a Azure account. You can get an Azure account, and you can run this OpenAI's model in your Azure account. And so you can be sure, like, when you set up your Microsoft account, you set some policies for your company, for your company's people, for your cloud data. So those policies can be exactly replicated for the Azure account, right? So you can be sure, okay, my data is not going to open AI company, but it's going to Microsoft, and Microsoft is managing the open AI. So the model itself. So, like, if you trust Microsoft, you can trust that process, right? If you don't trust Microsoft, then I don't think you're not a construction company, because everybody has 99% of them has SharePoint and Outlook, right? So,
Yeah. Okay, so that's an interesting one, another alternative that gives you kind of the best of both worlds, because OpenAI gave the product to Microsoft, and Microsoft is just running it for you.
yeah,
So you don't have to worry about everything else. So I guess then, whenever you guys are working with software companies offering AI, ask how they're connecting to these AI models, right?
yeah,
Even if they say they have their own models, ask them how those work, because sometimes they say they have their own models, but the reality is they're just having a really nice prompt, like what we talked last week, a really nice prompt underneath it that it's helping them do things on top of ChatGPT and things like that, right? So really,
Mhm.
they're not using their own models, but some companies are. Some companies have trained their own models and are using those models. So it's more aligned to the DeepSeek kind of thing, right? These companies have their own servers where all the information that it's coming, it's using the models and giving you the answers or whatever their products offers. So there's companies that are doing that. So there's variety out there. Make sure to ask how are they using AI to make sure that you understand what's happening to your data.
Yeah, for sure. So I think also the part of that was like there are very, very, very little chances that data is going to get leaked if you trust Microsoft or OpenAI. Like your data is going to remain in their thing. It's not going to get leaked to public. Almost, I'm certain it's never going to happen because what are the chances of Microsoft being hacked, right? The
Yeah.
world economy would stand still if that happens, right? But if you are using a company like us, right? We are a startup, so you have to ask us like how we are managing your data, right? Because it's not going to leak at Microsoft point, but it can leak at our point, right? So we need to be very cognizant of that process. The second part is training the model. So you can opt out for sure. You can say, hey, we don't want to be process of training the model. We don't want you to make your model better at our expense. We are paying you, and that's the relationship we're gonna have. We're gonna pay you, and you're gonna provide us AI services, and that's the end of it. So you can do those things, and so you can decide when your data is not going to be used for training the things. Um, but I also just want to do this hypothetical exercise. Like, what happens if OpenAI trains a model with your data? If 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 they get all your work plans, like how do you excavate, and um, they train the model with it.
Yeah. And I think model training, it's probably a whole 30-minute chat, but just high level, right? What it means by training a model is giving giving enough examples of something to a mathematical model that it's gonna use those examples to identify a pattern and generate a solution or an output, right? So the cat example, right? So here's an image of a cat. After 10,000 images, it knows what it means for something to be a cat, right?
Yeah,
It understands these cats have this triangle shapes that are probably their ears, right? And
yeah,
these things in the middle of the circle that seems to be head, right? It doesn't know what an ear is. It
yeah,
just understands pixels and shapes, right? So
yeah,
at the end, it's able to generate what a cat is because it understands what's that mathematical representation of a cat, right? But to get to that, it had to have a lot of images of cats to understand what is a cat, right? So one data point for you from you, it won't really make a difference in the training of the model, right? Because it just help maybe validate that there are certain processes that you follow or a construction company follows, right? Or
hmm,
specific things that fit into a pattern. But it's not like now this company knows or this model knows what company A, everything about company A, right? It
hmm.
won't really work that way because it's not that in the memory saving all that, it's just mapping and kind of finding patterns in the data.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So it's a process of finding patterns in the data. So if enough people, if you have enough data point that says to build one story building, it's going to cost $1 million. Then if you ask like, hey, how much it's going to cost to build a one story building, then it's probably going to say $1 million because that's part of its data set, and it has seen it so many times that it will remember those things. So to remember anything, you have to show it like hundreds of times, millions of times, and then it will learn those things, right? That those are so one data point from your company maybe won't make a difference, but we also have example where people have asked it to produce like whole book because it's seen the books, right? So write a novel uh, of Agatha Christie, and it writes that same novel because it's seen those novels. So there's also a chance, like if you have somewhere in data say like we bid this project on like $20 million value, and then if you ask what did company X bid on those value, and if it gets leaked, maybe it becomes part of the memory. So that risk is there, but then users have to ask very specific pointed question and go dig into that memory of AI to find those answers, right?
Yeah,
But there's a risk. There's a risk that it can become part of the memory.
yeah, and I think also the uh, these AI companies, before some information is presented back, there's a filtering process. There's
Yeah,
a prompt that is checking what the system is answering, right?
yeah,
And so in those prompts, they already have specified a lot of security measures
yeah,
to prevent some of this information from getting out, right? It's not impossible, but to get a model to answer something very unique, it requires someone who really knows how to talk to the computer, how to write
yeah,
a right. And yeah, there's been examples of people asking these AI models to expose their main prompts and things like that, but it's not easy.
yeah. It's not easy, but yeah, that's a takeaway. Like, there's almost zero chances that somebody is gonna find out your bid pricing if it gets like first. It's very little chances. Like if you take the precautions, if you use the right platforms to process your data, and you sign in with the right policies, there's very little chance, there's no chances that it's going to leak. And let's say somebody in your company is using ChatGPT on the side and feeding your files, and it doesn't have any of those things, those measures in place, then the chances of it leaking is high. And then also it's making somebody can find specific information, it's very little, but the chances are not zero,
Yeah,
for sure. And I
yeah,
think that's one thing is like you should quickly adopt these ChatGPT kind of tools in your company before your employee adopts it. Does
yeah,
it make a sense? Like if your junior engineer is like putting all the bid documents in the ChatGPT and asking it to refine it or send emails, then he is leaking all the data, right? To the ChatGPT without your explicit permissions and rules and regulation. So you should be on top of it. Like you should make the policy for the company, uh, talk to companies, figure out, get a plan for those employees, maybe.
yeah. No, and that's also like a way to manage security, definitely, because if unless maybe you are paying a lot of money to ChatGPT, right? You might be able to have them work with you to set some of these policies for you.
Yeah,
But most probably for a majority of companies, that's not something that can be done. So
yeah,
option one, if your employees are using ChatGPT, try to set up some policies.
yeah,
It's not perfect, but at least you might be able to control how they are using the tool. The other option is using other type of companies uh, that are leveraging, let's say, ChatGPT, but they act as an intermediate layer, right, between the user and ChatGPT. And so these companies have the power to limit what the user is sending to ChatGPT,
mhm,
right? So for example, with us, with Flowlly, right? We connect to this ChatGPT, but if our users ask us to limit uh, the type of information that we're sending, we could, at that intermediate layer, prevent some type of information from going into ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So that's another way to think about how to make it secure, right?
Yeah.
Or you can see and control what people are putting into these things,
Yeah.
the more secure you are. So
Yeah.
you can go Wild West, everyone has access to ChatGPT and who knows what they're putting there, or you can find something in between that allows you to limit or maybe even just track what are the type of things that people are asking and putting into these models.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Because like nobody is, none of the employees are doing business on their own personal email. They're using company's email. The company is buying Outlook for everybody, but then everybody is using probably ChatGPT without the permission of anybody, right? And no, yeah,
Yeah, and many companies I've spoken with, at the company level, they don't have credentials of ChatGPT or tools like that, but their employees are using it. So most probably they're using the free version, right,
yeah,
with their personal emails, and so the data is going there, right? So I think part of the thing right now is it's not something that you can control if people are using it or not, because they're going to use it when you don't know, right? And
yeah,
the first moment they find a valuable use case for it, they're just going to keep using it
yeah,
because it's making them more efficient, more productive, right? So
yeah,
it's just a human thing. So
mhm,
how do you manage that, right? So your employees might probably already be using it personally and for work stuff. So now you better jump into that boat and control a little bit more of what's happening.
yeah.
So,
I agree.
all right, cool. So
Mhm.
we reached the 37-minute mark. So I think it's time to go. But yeah, it was great chatting about this. I think for next week we should talk now about preparing your data for AI,
Yeah,
or what really means to have data ready for AI.
yeah, and I think we should, one of the later episode, we should also come back to security with like more questions. If we get more questions from people, like how we can resolve those kind of
Yeah.
things too.
Yeah, if you have any questions about any topic related to AI, send it to us, and we'll do our best to answer those in the coming episodes. And any topic you want us to cover, let us know, and we will definitely talk about those things. So
Yep.
again, thank you so much, and see you next week.
Yep. See you. Bye bye.